There we go. Finally. Operator error. Sometimes we blame the internet and sometimes it's operator error. All right, 23. To be enforceable, a contract for the conveyances of real estate must A, be acknowledged by witnesses, B, be written, C, be recorded, or D, have an expiration date. In order to be enforceable, a contract for the conveyance of real estate must have something in particular. So what do contracts have to be enforceable? Except for a contract less than a year. The answer is B. It has to be written. Number 24. A buyer makes an offer to purchase a house and the seller accepts the offer. However, before the salesperson can inform the buyer of the seller's decision, the buyer delivers a written notice that she is opting out and canceling the agreement. At this point, which of the following is true? A, the contract has been legitimately canceled and is null and void. B, the seller must give the buyer an opportunity to make a new offer. C, the buyer must perform under the terms of the contract. Or D, the seller must notify the buyer in writing that the buyer is in default. So remember, the buyer backed out before the seller responded. So it says, wait a minute. The buyer makes an offer to purchase a house and the seller accepts the offer. However, before the salesperson can inform the buyer of the seller's decision, the buyer delivers a written notice that she is opting out and canceling. The answer is A. The contract has been legitimately canceled and is null and void. And why is that? Because the buyer terminated prior to getting the response from the seller. Number 25. Which of the following is an essential element of a valid contract for the sale of real estate? A, a valid blank form that the contract is written on. B, a habitable property. C, an offer and acceptance. D, a marketable title. So an essential element for a contract to be valid. You've got two parties to a contract, right? Buyer and seller. Yes. Good morning, Ruth. Good morning, Lanice. All right. The answer is C, an offer and acceptance. Number 26. Okay, let's see what says. From Cindy, good morning. I've been meaning to get with you. Been super busy with select ball and football. I missed state by one question, but just have to study more and schedule to retest. Hey, that's really good. Just by one question. You'll make it next time. I wondered. I meant to reach out myself. All right, number 26. What kind of interest does the buyer acquire once a real estate sale contract is signed by the principal parties? A, legal title. B, lien holder interest. C, reversionary interest. Or D, equitable title. The kind of interest does the buyer acquire once a real estate sale contract is signed? Yes, 526D. Hey, Cindy, you're doing a Lillie. I was typing 30 something instead of 20 something. So it is an equitable title. All right, number 27. All right, let's see. Can you explain that one? Okay, let's go back. Okay, what kind of interest does the buyer acquire once a real estate sale contract is signed by the parties? Okay, it doesn't say whether you have a loan or not. Okay, so it's not a legal title, because a legal title is when it's done by a legal agency like the court. It's not a lien holder interest, because that would be the lender. Okay, the lender has a lien hold on it. And reversionary interest, remember, that's when somebody gives, let's see, somebody conveys a property, but it's not really, now let me reuse the term. Somebody allows someone to live on the property like an estate, and once that estate ends, it goes back to the original owner. So it reverts back to the original owner, right? Or it goes with the remainder man. So that's reversionary interest. So equitable title holders cannot transfer legal title to real property, but they derive benefits from the property's appreciation in value. So it's a beneficial interest in real property that gives the holder the right to acquire legal title to the property. So let's see what the answer says. So a sale contract gives the buyer an interest in the property that is called equitable title, or ownership in equity. If the seller defaults and the buyer can show good faith performance, the buyer can sue for a specific performance. That is, to compel the seller to transfer legal title upon payment of the contract price. Okay, so this must be, so what kind of interest does the buyer acquire once a real estate contract is signed by the principal parties? So the contract has been signed, it hasn't been sold yet, right? So the title, the deed has not been conveyed yet or signed by the seller or the owner or the main principal, right? And the grantor. So it hasn't gone to closing yet. They don't own it. So they have an equitable title, meaning until it closes, then they will have a legal title. So in the meantime, it's an escrow until the transfer, the closing deal closes, until the transaction closes. So it hasn't closed yet. So they have the right to sue the seller if for some reason the seller decides not to do their specific performance of a contract, right? Because you have a bilateral contract. Seller has to perform, buyer has to perform. Okay, so they have an interest in that property until it closes. Then they will own, they will get the deed on it. So let's see. Cindy says, lots of left. I didn't even notice that. That makes sense. Okay. All right. So, it says here that if the seller defaults on the contract, right, the buyer can do specific performance. The specific performance for the seller, okay, is the liquidated damages, which could be the earnest money if there was money put into escrow or whatever they were exchanging, a trade or a promissory note. Because remember, the earnest money does not have to be cash, right? The good faith earnest. So George says, thank you for explaining that. You're welcome. So equitable, they have equity. They have a right, an interest to that property until it closes. And then after that, they'll have ownership interest once it closes. All right. What were we on? 27? Yes. Okay. A contingency is a sale contract. In a sale contract is what? A promise by a buyer or seller to perform a specific action. B, a condition that, if unmet, renders the contract unenforceable. C, one of several alternative actions that buyer or seller may take to satisfy contract requirements. Or D, an option, unilateral action that either party may take at the request of the other party. So a contingency, some type of condition. Oops. Okay, so I said one word. That'll give you a clue to the answer. So yes, 27B. Oh, I forgot to type 26. All right, let's see. What did everybody answer? B. Very good. Oh my gosh, I typed 20. Oh, that was 26. Never mind. I'm getting all getting out of whack myself here. All right, number 28. Everybody got it right. Yes. Okay, this one's going to end up being small. Okay, number 28. A clause in a sale contract stipulates that the seller must provide evidence that the property is free of active termite infestation. Now, on the day of closing, the buyer learns that inspection service did not provide the required written documentation. The buyer then proceeds to declare the sale is off. Which of the following is true of this situation? A, the seller can sue for specific performance. B, the buyer will be in default and liable for damages if he does not complete the transaction. C, the buyer may be able to have the contract canceled. Or D, the contract is automatically void. Type your answer in the chat. All right, so far we have C by Lanice. Anybody else? All right, the answer is C. Nobody else answered. The buyer may be able to have the contract canceled because the seller has to show proof, okay? So it says the contract stipulates seller must provide evidence that the property is free of active termite. So they've got to have some type of written documentation, right, from a inspection service or a termite company or infestation company, right? So on the day of the closing, the buyer learns that the inspection service did not provide the required written documentation. Therefore, the buyer can ask for it, and if it's not delivered, they may terminate and be able to get their earnest money back. Number 30. Oops. Number 29. I'm jumping ahead here. A buyer signs an earnest money agreement and gives it to the broker who showed her the property she is buying. After leaving the broker's office, she reconsiders and decides she prefers a different property. How long does she have to take back her offer? Okay, so it says buyer signs an earnest money agreement, gives it to the broker who showed her the property she is buying. Right after leaving the broker's office, she reconsiders and decides she prefers a different property. How long does she have to take her offer back? A, until the seller communicates acceptance of the offer. B, until the earnest money deposit check is cashed. C, she can take it back at any time but must forfeit the earnest money. Or D, she cannot take it back until after the expiration date of the offer. So type your answer in the chat. Okay, this answer is a little bit tricky, okay, because it says the buyer signs an earnest money agreement. Okay, so remember that in order for a contract to be accepted, there has to be written acceptance and notice, right? Actual notice. And here they don't mention whether there was actual notice or not. It just says buyer signs an agreement, gives it to the broker who showed her the property. Then, after leaving the broker, she reconsiders and decides she prefers a different property. Now, did she specify to the broker that she wants to terminate? It doesn't say that. Okay, so that is the key here. If that buyer had went back and told her, hey, I terminate this offer, and before the seller gets it, right, then it's acceptable because it terminated before the seller replied. But here, she just reconsiders, decides she prefers a different property, didn't terminate it. So what does it mean? A, right? Until the seller communicates acceptance of the offer. Oh, shit. No wonder you were typing the 30s. You have a new computer. I understand. So it is A. Until the seller communicates the acceptance of the offer. So let's see. Cindy and Ruth typed C. Lisbeth typed D. She can take it back at any time, but must forfeit the earnest money. No, because the seller hasn't replied yet. Okay, so until the seller communicates acceptance of the offer or not. So she decides she prefers a different property, but she didn't terminate it. If she does terminate it, none of the others would be accurate, right? She would automatically, the contract would be terminated before the seller provides actual notice, right? Actual notice means, hey, I signed it and I'm letting you know that I accepted it. As long as she cancels prior to that, she can get her earnest money. But it doesn't say that she terminated. It just says, oh, she prefers a different property. Okay. So how long does she have to take back her offer? Until the seller communicates acceptance of the offer. If the seller doesn't, then she can terminate. So 29A. Y'all get that? They left out some information to where we could have chosen. See, if the seller had already accepted, it would be C. She can take it back at any time, but must forfeit the earnest money. Well, seller hadn't accepted yet, right? And D, she can take it back until after the expiration date of the offer. No. It depends on if she terminates anytime the expiration of the offer, it's still a negotiation. You might have said any time prior to closing, and yes, however, she'll lose the money. So let's see, Ruth says, so she has to wait until the seller responds. Yes, because it doesn't say that she terminated it. She just reconsiders and decides she prefers a different property. So in order to go to the next step, she needs to terminate it with the realtor before getting an answer from the seller. Well, they don't give us that option in the answers, right? So we have to go with the best answer of A, B, C, or D. And that would be until the seller communicates acceptance of the offer. Then she can terminate. So it's a tricky one. It depends on what the question states and what options the answers give you. All right, number 30. On Wednesday, Fred offers to sell his property to Jack for $275,000, with the offer to remain open until 5 p.m. the next day. On Thursday morning, Sally offers Fred $280,000 for the property, and Fred accepts. At 1 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, Jack accepts. Which of the following is true of this situation? So Wednesday, Fred offers to sell his property to Jack with the offer to remain open until 5. So Fred is going to sell to Jack, but is leaving it open till 5 in case something else comes in the next day, which is Thursday. On Thursday morning, Fred offers $280,000 for the property. Sally offers Fred $280,000 and accepts it. At 1 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, Jack accepts. Which of the following is true? So now there's 2 accepted offers, right? Well, no, there's an accepted offer from Sally that Jack accepted. The first one says Fred offers to sell it to Jack, but isn't accepted until maybe 5 p.m. So A, the acceptance by Sally creates a contract and terminates Fred's offer to Jack. B, Fred has entered into contracts with both Jack and Sally to sell the same property. C, Fred's acceptance of Sally's offer is invalidated by Jack's acceptance because Fred's offer to Jack was made prior to Sally's offer to Fred. Or D, no contract has been created because it is impossible to have 2 valid sale contracts for the same property. What's the link? Oh, yes, the link is StreamYard.com/Facebook. Hi, Jaslyn. Yeah, I didn't see your name. So this is the link, Jaslyn, that you can use, okay, to give StreamYard permission to show your Facebook name on here. All right, so I've got B, A. Okay, so the answer is B. Fred has entered into contracts with both Jack and Sally to sell the same property, right? Because he entered into contract with Jack, right, which is open until 5 p.m. And then he enters into another contract that he accepts from Sally. So he's got 2 contracts. So at 1 p.m., Jack accepts. So since he gave Jack an opportunity till 5 p.m. to accept or not, Jack responded within that time limit. Therefore, he needs to either terminate Jack's offer prior to accepting Sally's, but he didn't do that. So he's got 2 contracts. B. Okay. And that's what we have to also be really careful in real life, because some individuals want to offer on multiple properties. The good thing is that we have the option period and they can terminate for whatever reason. So the answer is B. So let me see. Lisbeth, you said A. The acceptance by Sally creates a contract and terminates Fred's offer. No, it does not do that. Okay, because Fred gave Jack until 5 p.m. Okay, and at 1, Jack says, "Hey, I accept." So in one of them, Fred offers it to Jack, open till 5 p.m. So if Jack replies after 5 p.m., then the offer is with Sally. Okay. And then on the second one, Sally offers to buy it and he accepts it. Well, he didn't cancel the one with Jack. Therefore, he's got 2 accepted offers because Jack replied that he accepts the offer before the deadline of 5 p.m. Okay. All right. Number 31. Oh, we should be able to. Among the items that normally must be disclosed in a sale contract or its addendum are the A, buyer's financial capability, B, buyer's source of funds for the down payment, C, seller's acceptance and seller's acceptable price range, or D, agency relationships and property conditions. So among the items that normally must be disclosed in a sales contract or its addendum, right? Because it could have an addendum, or its addendum are. So what must be disclosed? Yes, the answer is D, agency relationship and property conditions. So among the items that normally must be disclosed in a sale contract or its addendum are the buyer's financial capability, buyer's source of funds for the down payment. No, that'll be between the lender and the buyer, right? Unless it's a cash offer, then the buyer has to show proof of funds. Seller acceptable price range, no. And D, agency relationship and property condition. So in one of the addendum, okay, in a contract, if they're getting a loan, is the third party financial addendum. And today we ask for a pre-approval letter that shows that they are able, okay, ready to buy. And so that would be their financial capability in the third party addendum. However, the best one is agent's relationship and property condition. Acceptable price range, no, right? I mean, seller wants to get the highest and best price, so they're not going to share the acceptable price range. Okay. And buyer source of funds, no, you just have to show proof that you've got the money if it is a cash offer. All right, number 32. To create an enforceable option to buy contract, there must be an exchange of what? An enforceable option to buy contract. There must be an exchange of what? A promise to sell and a promise to buy. B, valuable consideration and a right to buy. C, valuable consideration and a promise to buy. D, a down payment and a post-dated contract for sale. So to create an enforceable option to buy contract. It is not D, Ruth. So I would take another attempt. And it is not C. And I'll explain why. So the answer is 532B, a valuable consideration and a right to buy. Okay, the consideration can be a promise to buy. Okay, a promise to pay the earnest money. Okay, at a later date, because the consideration can be a promissory note. In case they're promising to buy it, and they're putting that in writing. So it's basically that's a consideration. The right to buy means that they are capable of buying. Okay, they have the right to purchase it themselves. They're insane. Not insane. They're not insane. Okay, they're in all their right mind situation, right? Status. And they're not being coerced to purchase the property. The down payment and a post-dated contract, no. So in an option to buy contract, that's like a lease option to buy. So you're going to have different types of documents that are required: a lease, a contract, and the option. So the contract would be a purchase of today's price, but they're purchasing it, they're closing the sale, the option to close it at a later date. The lease, they're going to lease it right now at a certain amount of money. And the option is they're going to put an option fee down to close it, let's say, exercise their option a year later or 2 years later. So lots of different documents in an option to buy contract. That's like a lease option to buy. They decide on the price today, they purchase it later. So it's an option in a contract. Okay, you have 10 days to do your due diligence, or 5 days, or however many days are agreed upon. So here they have to have a valuable consideration and the right to buy. They have the right to buy it themselves. So 532B. Okay. So valuable consideration can be a promise to buy it. Okay, so that would be similar. Promise to sell and promise to buy. To create an enforceable option to buy contract, there must be an exchange of, well, it has to be, they have to have a valuable consideration. So it's either B or C. So remember, any contract has to have a consideration, a valuable consideration. It can't just be a promise to sell, a promise to buy. They have to tie it up with something, some consideration. Could be cash, a promissory note, or trade. Okay, number 33. Mary Carboy buys a house from Jim Schmidt. At the same time, obtains an option to purchase the adjoining vacant lot for $10,000 within 1 year. A few months later, Carboy informs Schmidt that she is ready to exercise her option, but finds that Schmidt has received an offer of $12,000 from another party. Schmidt states that he will accept the offer unless Carboy is willing to match the $12,000 offer. Which of the following is true of this situation? So in the beginning, it says Mary buys a house from Jim. At the same time, obtains an option to purchase the adjoining vacant lot at $10,000 within a year. So they already agreed that she'll exercise that option in a year. Okay. But then she says, okay, I'm going to exercise that option just a few months later, which she has that right to do. Okay. They can exercise the option prior to the deadline. So is it A, Schmidt must sell to Carboy for $10,000? B, Carboy must pay $12,000 or lose the property? C, Schmidt may sell to Carboy or the other party, but the price cannot exceed $10,000. D, if the other party delivers payment before Carboy does, the option is canceled. Okay, so far I have A. And yes, the answer is A. Jim Schmidt must sell to Carboy for $10,000 because they already had an agreed upon option to buy it within a year for $10,000. Jim cannot decide to sell it to somebody else because he's getting more money. He's got to wait. Remember, when there's an option period, so it's a unilateral contract. Seller has to wait, okay, until the buyer makes a decision. Okay. Number 34. Which of the following is true regarding an option? Which of the following is true regarding the assignability of an option? A, it is assignable only if the contract specifically allows assignment. B, it is never assignable. C, it is assignable only if the option is exercised. D, it is always assignable unless the contract prohibits assignment. So type your answer in the chat. There's a whole bunch of you on here. It's great to see all of you. Well, I see your names, right? Yes, the answer is D. It is always assignable unless the contract prohibits assignment. All right, Cindy says C. It is assignable only if the option is exercised. No, it can be assigned at any time unless it specifies that there is no assignment allowed. Okay, so D, it is always assignable unless the contract prohibits assignment. All right, number 35. Which of the following is true? Well, let me see if I can get it a little bit larger. Yeah, there we go. Which of the following is true of a contract for deed transaction? A contract for deed. A, at the end of the contract period, the vendee receives equitable title, provided all required periodic payments have been made. B, the vendee has no right to possess or occupy the property during the contract period. C, at the end of the contract period, the vendor conveys legal title provided the vendee has fulfilled an obligation. D, the vendor may cancel the contract at any time before the final payment has been received. Ooh. Okay, Cindy, I gotcha. Yes, the answer was D. So type your answer in the chat for 35. Yes, the answer is C. At the end of the contract period, the vendor conveys legal title provided the vendee has fulfilled all obligations. Okay, and remember in one of the prior questions, I said a legal title is if a court has to get involved. In that prior question, if the buyer had to enforce for the seller to sell it, right, it would be approved by the courts, right? So it would become legal title because the seller wanted to back out. So seller has to perform and transfer legal title. But if it's not done by the seller, then the buyer can take them to court and get the legal title through the decision of the judge. So legal title is ownership of the property. Okay, so that's it for national questions today. We're going to move on to state questions. So did I type 5? 535C. All right. So any questions on, I typed it twice. Okay. Well, any questions on those national questions before we shift? Questions? No? All right, then we are proceeding to Texas state questions. So we are starting with 416. So Lanice says, have a great day, everyone. Yes, you too, Lanice. Thank you for joining us. All right, so Texas state questions. And anyone that was here for national, thank you so much for joining us. See you next time, which will be Monday. All right, here we go. Put your Texas cap on. In the course of brokerage, oops, I guess I need to share the screen, huh? In the course of brokerage practice, licensees share or split fees. Which of the following compensation scenarios would constitute a license law violation? A, sharing or rebating a commission with another sales agent with prior broker and principal approval. B, paying a one-time referral fee to an unlicensed party which is not practicing real estate. C, splitting a commission with an unlicensed party who is performing licensed activities. Or D, sharing or splitting a commission with a sponsoring broker. So which one would constitute a license law violation? Type your answer in the chat. Okay, so far I have C. And yes, the answer is C, splitting a commission with an unlicensed party who is performing licensed activities. So Cindy, I just forgot. So you had passed your national, right? You just needed the state? Because you only mentioned that you missed the state by 1. So what happened? I refreshed my memory here on the national because you're with us here for both. Yes, ma'am, you passed the national. The other day, was it you who said 5 more questions? Okay, so you passed the national. Oh, okay. So on this exam, you passed the national and just missed the state by 1. Okay, awesome. Congratulations. I think I understand it now. All right, number 17. As a rule, rebates, commissions, and service provider fees in real estate transactions must be transparent. In that context, which of the following scenarios is in compliance with license law? A, without the buyer's consent, a service provider, and so here's Cindy's answer. In that context, which of the following scenarios is in compliance with license law? Without the buyer's consent, a service provider rendering services to the buyer pays the seller's representative a commission for the referral. Okay, so the first one says without the buyer's consent. B, a licensee discloses and obtains consent from her seller client to receive a fee from a property inspector. C, a licensee accepts a service provider fee that is contingent on the client purchasing the provider services. Or D, a licensee who represents the buyer enters a contract with service provider to perform services for the buyer on behalf of the provider. So which scenario is in compliance with license law? So which one is acceptable? The answer is B. A licensee discloses and obtains consent from her seller client to receive a fee from a property inspector. That one is in compliance with license law. Let's see. Answer D. A licensee who represents the buyer enters a contract with a service provider to perform services for the buyer on behalf of the provider. So licensee represents the buyer, enters a contract with a service provider to perform services for the buyer on behalf of the provider. No, that one is not acceptable. Because it's saying that the licensee is representing the buyer, but the licensee is the one who enters into a contract with the service provider to perform services for the buyer. But he or she is doing it on behalf of the provider. No, that's not acceptable. So the answer was B. So a licensee discloses, which we must do, and obtains consent from her seller client to receive a fee from a property inspector. So we have addendums, okay, disclosures that we have parties sign if we're going to receive a fee from a vendor. And it's not considered a kickback. It's like now there's so many affiliation fees that when we're referring someone, right, we're in the business of getting paid as a commission, right, for a service we provide. We're independent contractors. And so are a lot of these other contractors, service providers. And therefore, we're sending them a lot of business, okay? We're referring a lot of business. So now they've put in place that we can provide a fee, an affiliation fee for sending them business, helping sell their product. Just like we have an affiliation with Amazon. You can have an affiliation with Amazon and with a whole bunch of other organizations, okay, that people buy products that you recommend, and then they'll pay you a fee when somebody uses your link to make a purchase. So for example, in the description below, okay, on the YouTube, I post on there several books that I like to use, that I like to read, okay, when starting real estate business, or books that I recommend for you to prep. You click the link, okay, and you purchase the books or anything else. Once you click that link, Amazon will pay me an affiliate fee. All right, number 18. Which of the following is true regarding referrals? A, the party receiving the referral must be licensed. B, referring parties need not be licensed under any conditions. C, the referring party must be licensed regardless of compensation expectations. Or D, the referring party must be licensed if expecting compensation for the referral. So which is true regarding referrals? So this is like referrals between realtors, okay? Ooh, what the heck happened there? All right, no answers yet. Okay, so far we have D. The answer is D. Okay, so the referring party must be licensed if expecting compensation for the referral. In real estate, whenever we're sending a referral, the person sending the referral must be licensed and the person receiving the referral must be licensed. Okay, these are real estate referrals, not disclosing that we may be getting paid a fee from a vendor because we're sending them a referral from our client. Like, let's say, so in this case, it's like I'm here in Texas and my client is moving to Oregon. So I'm sending a realtor in Oregon a referral fee. That realtor has to be licensed in Oregon, okay, in order to receive commission, okay, from a referral. So I will receive a 25% referral, okay, because I am licensed in Texas and referred my client to them in Oregon, and they are receiving the referral. So they will get, possibly a 75% commission for receiving a referral that I sent, and they must be licensed. Okay, so the answer there was D. All right, number 19. Let's see if it comes out really big. Yes. Number 19, which of the following would be categorized as an unlicensed activity not requiring a license? Okay, an unlicensed activity not requiring a license. A, developing a mailing campaign for a new licensee. B, responding to phone inquiries regarding the condition of an open house listing. C, confirming a listing address on the phone. Or D, assimilating recently sold properties into a price strategy for a builder. So something that an assistant might be able to do and not need a license. It is not D. So give it another attempt. Yes, the answer is C. Good morning, Daylene. The answer is C, confirming a listing address on the phone. Okay, that doesn't require a license. Developing a mailing campaign for a new licensee, yes, because that licensee is the one that knows what kind of mailing campaign they want. Oh, Jaylee says she's not a morning person. All right, got it. Well, it's great to see you here. And then let's see what else. What other answers were put on here? D, assimilating recently sold properties into a price strategy for a builder. No, that requires a license because the licensees are the ones that are educated about pricing and going to be presenting it to a builder. So the only one that's not is confirming a listing address, okay, on the phone. Number 20. Which of the following would not, okay, not be classified as an unlicensed activity? Which of the following would positively be defined as a licensed activity? So they're telling it to you both ways, okay? Which one would not be classified as an unlicensed activity? That means it's classified as an activity that a licensed realtor would do. A, supervising a new licensee. B, inputting data on a new listing into MLS. C, scheduling and confirming showing appointments. or D, providing mortgage interest rates of area banks to a consumer? So which one would possibly be defined as a licensed activity? No, it is not B. Inputting data, you can be you can input data into systems. We're not interacting with a client or sharing any information, and we're doing it with the instructions and the information provided by the listing realtor. So the answer here is A. Supervising a new licensee requires being licensed. So as you all know, there's a lot of companies out there that have people schedule and confirm appointments. They're not sharing anything. It's just like sharing a listing address. They're just scheduling a date on a calendar, okay? C, providing interest rates and area banks to a consumer. That's public information that's out there available to everybody. So that doesn't require a license. Better refer them to a lender. However, we can Google it and we'll see the interest rates in the area of wherever the consumer is, right? Because interest rates, whenever you go online and you search for interest rates, it says, oh, what state are you in? Boom, right? Because every state might be a little bit different. So the answer was 1420B. I'm sorry, 1428. Got it. Yes. All right. Number 21. Oh, man. Okay, it's going to be small. Kind of. All right, number 21. Which of the following statements is true regarding the seller's disclosure of property condition document? So when do you really need that document? Okay. A, it is to be completed and given to a buyer at the seller's option and discretion. B, it must be completed on or before the effective date of a binding purchase agreement. C, licensees and firms may design their own form as there is no promulgated or suggested form provided by TRAC. Or D, if a seller is not aware of the particular property condition item, he or she must have such item inspected for workability. So which one is true regarding the seller's disclosure of property condition form? No, it is not at the discretion of the seller, Cindy. Sorry about that. Well, no, we don't have to be sorry, right? So it is not it is not up to the discretion, okay, of the seller. If the seller is occupying that property, it is important that they provide that seller disclosure notice of property condition to a buyer. Good morning, Michael. Thank you for joining us. The answer is B. It must be completed on or before the effective date of a binding purchase agreement. So whenever we're listing a property, right, we want to have the seller, complete that seller's disclosure form so that we may provide it to the buyers prior to a contract being signed. And the contract will specify whether the seller is given a certain amount of days to deliver it. But that is the best answer. Okay. Which of the following statement is true regarding seller disclosure? It's not on the discretion of the seller. Okay, seller disclosure notice are required. There are some exceptions. C, licensees and firms may design their own. No, we do have a promulgated contract form. Or D, if a seller is not aware of particular property condition, he or she must have such. No, they don't have to have it inspected. They can, before getting a contract, but they don't have to. They just complete the form and have it available for when a contract is received and is binding. The contract does specify that the seller can have a certain amount of days to deliver the seller's disclosure notice. But the best answer here is it must be completed on or before the effective date of a binding purchase agreement. Okay, number 22. Some exceptions exist to the rules for completing the seller's property condition, seller's disclosure notice. We abbreviate it as SDN, seller's disclosure notice report. Which of the following is not such an exception? A, father's transfers the property to his daughter. B, the property is used for residential purposes. C, the property is new and has not been owned before. Or D, the transaction is the foreclosure sale. So which one is not an exception? Okay, remember I mentioned there are some exceptions. I didn't mention the exceptions, okay? However, there are exceptions. No, C is an exception, Cindy. When it's a brand new construction, never been lived in, a seller's disclosure notice of property condition is not required. The answer is B. The property is used for residential purposes. That is not an exception. So an owner lives in the property, then they must disclose the condition of the home. Not renting, okay, they own the home, okay, as a residential purpose. Yeah, sometimes we do read it wrong. And the transaction is a foreclosure sale. No, that is an exception, Michael, because the lenders have not lived in the property. Okay. So careful. It says, which one is not an exception to having to complete the seller's disclosure notice? Lenders don't have to complete it. An executor, an administrator assigned by the court, okay, and a probate, or someone that dies without a will or with a will, okay, that's the executor. Okay, they don't need to have a seller's disclosure notice because the seller's disclosure notice is provided by somebody who owns it or is occupying the property. Okay. Number 23. A seller delivers the seller's property condition disclosure to the buyer after the deadline. What is the consequence? A, the licensee has violated license law. B, the seller's contract is nullified. C, the buyer may rescind the contract within 7 days following receipt of the disclosure. Or D, the buyer can compel the seller to repair any undisclosed defects. All right, so far I have C, wee. Yes, the answer is C. The buyer may rescind the contract within 7 days following the receipt of the disclosure. So once the disclosure is provided, the buyer has up to 7 days to decide to terminate or continue with the contract. All right, number 24. Oh, that's a long question. Number 24. A homeowner resides in a new subdivision managed by a homeowners association. What obligation, if any, does this fact create whenever the owner decides to sell? So, homeowner resides in a new subdivision managed by a homeowners association. Homeowner resides. Okay. So, what is their obligation does this create whenever the owner decides to sell? A, the owner must advise any buyer of the managing entity and associated fees prior to closing. B, the owner must advise the buyer of all homeowner obligations or face a 30-day exposure to contract rescission. C, the licensee must disclose the association's existence or face disciplinary action. Or D, the owner must disclose the existence of the association and all obligation accompanying membership. You all are on the ball here. Answered that one really quick. So let's see if you're correct. And yes, the answer is D. The owner must disclose the existence of the association and all obligations accompanying membership. Now, of course, they're also going to do a seller's disclosure notice. Okay. Number 25. In addition to obligations regarding property condition and homeowners association, if a selling homeowner resides on the property abutting tidal water, he or she must do what? A, disclose the mean, high, and low tide levels in a letter signed by all principals. B, disclose the changeability of the property's boundaries owing to erosion. C, disclose the boundary line out into the water since the waterway is navigable. Or D, provide all history of landfills occurring over the prior 10 years. No, the answer is not C. Oh, forgot to type that. Okay, so what did I say? That the answer was not C, and most of you answered C. The answer here is B. Okay, so B is disclose the changeability of the property's boundaries owing to erosion. There will be an addendum, okay, that goes along with that. You're going to see another answer type here, which I failed to include. That was 24D. I mean, not C. B, 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 B. Yeah, sounds like me sometimes typing the wrong answer, huh? Yes, Cindy. Okay, so it says disclose the changeability of the property's boundaries owing to erosion. Coastal property homeowners are required to disclose to buyers that the property's boundaries can fluctuate due to tidal erosion effects. So there will be an addendum for coastal properties that we include, that we recommend, we advise the sellers to include. Importantly, such changes can cause encroachments onto the public property. Sellers must use sale contract from SCF number pound 34-4 to complete the disclosure. Okay. So yeah, depending on certain areas of the country where we live, there will be additional disclosures, okay, that can be added to the listing contract, or that we disclose with the forms, okay? And so that does exist. Or when we get a contract, then we say, okay, here's a form that you also need to review, okay, before accepting, before accepting to make an offer. So a lot of these disclosures, the buyer's agent will ask for them prior to the buyer signing a contract so that they can review them. Or if not, say within so many days, please deliver seller these particular disclosures. Okay, so the answer there was 25B. Okay, so we've done 10 questions on state, and we're going to call it a day with that. Because remember, you have less state questions than you do national. And instead of ending up without any state questions, okay, I'm limiting the amount of state questions to provide you as you have less of them on the exam and more questions for national. So any questions so far? Okay, before we call it a day. As you saw, the next day, which will be Monday, we'll do questions on contracts. So you might want to study a little bit about contracts before Monday. All right, so if no questions, anyone that is on YouTube, hey, remember to give me a thumbs up, okay? If you found this video useful, the information useful. And if you don't, hey, don't say anything bad. You know, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything. No thumbs down, thumbs up. And if it's your first time to my YouTube channel, please tap that subscribe button, click that little bell so that you're further to get notified every time I go live, and click this thumbs up. Okay. And remember, I also am a real estate agent with eXp Realty. And when you're ready to interview, hey, let's get together and have a chat and discuss about your options and see if eXp might be the option for you. We are a virtual company. So if no questions, then until next time, catch you all later. So have a good day, says Jaylene, and thank you. You're very welcome. Have an awesome Saturday and weekend.